As we
I was just
welcome in
about to say,
James
what is
Ham.
this guy doing on a Tuesday night? Searching his name.
James, the conversation all day has been centered on Giannis Antetokounmpo and where he can play and what teams are interested. There are rumors Atlanta's interested. We've put together scenarios for the San Antonio Spurs. We put together scenarios for the New York Knicks. Shams is reporting more on exactly where this breakup emulated from. And James, I'll ask you because I think you were the first one to point. This could go either direction as it pertains to the trade deadline. Or I guess the trade deadline is a long way away, but as it pertains to December 15th, trades being made around the league, everything could be halted until the Bucks decide what's happening here, or it could speed up the process because we might be dumbed down to just a handful of teams in the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes.
Oh yeah, this thing could go in a bunch of different directions. Like I think that there are going to be plenty of teams because like look, the Sacramento Kings, we've already heard over the last couple of weeks that that there's interest from the Milwaukee Bucks and a guy like Zach LaVine. I'm hearing that the Knicks might be interested in one of the Kings guards. So like these are things that like sure they could happen today. You could make a trade, or you could wait until December 15th when some of these players can be moved. They can't be moved currently. But there's also a possibility that the Knicks sit back and say, hey, we have to put everything on hold. We have to put everything on hold because we might get Giannis. And like, maybe we can tie you into that deal. Maybe we can figure something out. But until that's like, we've taken it as far as it can go, we've got to focus on that. And we've got to make sure that we have our assets ready for that transaction specifically. And that, again, that could be like, do you think Zach LaVine is going to go to the Milwaukee Bucks if Giannis Antetokounmpo is not there? The Zach ties sound like something where you're trying to give Giannis someone else to play with, right? Someone else that can help him. That's what that feels like. It does not feel like a move that the Bucks are making for their post Giannis life. And so, like, look, I think that this can tie up a whole bunch of stuff, and that's just the Kings. Like that's one team that we know of that has ties to it. That I know, like, has ties to at least two of these other teams that might be involved. And so now, what does the rest of the league do? How are they all getting, sort of their ducks in a row? And can you be part of a much larger transaction that maybe one of those teams does need a guy like Zach LaVine to make the money work? Maybe they need a guy like DeMar DeRozan to make the money work, because that's where it gets super complicated, right? And I'd also add, the Kings did something really sneaky at the like right at the beginning of free agency, and so they ended up doing a sign and trade for Dennis Schroeder, right? And if we remember back to that date, the reason why they did the sign and trade for Dennis Schroeder was because they had the expiring trade exception from Kevin Huerter, right? So instead of using the mid-level exception, which is 14 point whatever million bucks, they used this trade exception. The trade exception expires after a year from the trade. The mid-level exception doesn't expire until the trade deadline. So again, it's a way in which the Kings could potentially get involved into a trade where, again, like, this is all weird moving pieces all over the place, but the Kings can trade a mid-level exception to a team for a $14 million player that goes somewhere else. And so basically they're trading a salary slot. So there are ways in which you can get involved in these deals because you have something like the mid-level still. Now, the Kings can't go out and just sign somebody using the mid-level. They can't trade and bring someone into the mid-level because they're hard capped at the first apron. But that doesn't mean that they can't make another move that clears up a bunch of cap space, and then all of a sudden they have this mid-level to use as part of a bigger trade. So again, like, trades in the NBA are super, super complex. And when you throw in the aprons and this whole idea that you have to trade dollar for dollar and all that stuff, it becomes even more complicated. And so there's a possibility here that, maybe a team like the Knicks, they need to clear up cap space in order to get below one of the aprons in order to make the Giannis Antetokounmpo trade, because they're already above the second apron, or they're approaching the second apron, and they're hard capped. Well, they can still make a trade to take back less money and get themselves lower, and then work other trades. So this is where it gets super, super crazy and weird, and why multi-team trades sometimes are the only path forward, and sometimes they're too complex to figure out, and you just like throw your hands up and go, okay, we can't do this deal.
Very, very funny moment last night on Twitter, as there's a guy in Michigan who, for the last couple of days, I don't know if he's a reporter or I don't know who he is. He doesn't seem like a random, but I don't know if he's connected. He's been talking about how the Kings and the Pistons have been discussing a trade in recent, like in the last week. And somebody might have asked him, they said, hey, Dennis Schroeder may be going back to Detroit. And he goes, currently actively being discussed. So Jill asked the question, she quote tweets him and she says, correct me if I'm wrong, but because it was a sign and trade, doesn't that mean he can't be traded back there for a year unless the third team is traded for him first? If he signed as a free agent, that's different, but it wasn't. Is there some loophole we aren't aware of? And the guy responds back to Jill and says, IDK.
Oh, great. Nice. Sit your ass down, man.
I bring that up.
You got Jill ads running laps around you, boy. Sit down.
I bring that up to ask you, James, is it possible for the Pistons and the Kings to work on a trade involving Dennis Schroeder because of how he was acquired over the summer?
I'm almost positive that the answer is no. They cannot reacquire Dennis Schroeder for 1 year. Yeah. So, like, from what I know, that is not a possibility. Now, I can dive deeper into it and make sure there isn't some weird little thing, but I'm pretty sure there's not. But that doesn't mean that Detroit and Sacramento can't discuss a trade on another guy that they had interest in, like a year and a half ago, in Malik Monk. I mean, but I think Schroeder is off the table for that specific team. The league puts in these weird rules all over the place. We talked about it earlier. Me and Kyle did on the Insiders. The Zydrunas Ilgauskas rule, where you can't trade a player to a team and then he gets waived and then you sign him back. So they closed that loophole, because that was a way that, a team like the Cavs during the Mike Brown era in Cleveland was trying to get around. They were trying to circumvent the cap. They wanted to make a trade, but they also wanted to get Zydrunas Ilgauskas back. They had to use Zydrunas Ilgauskas to make the trade, which they did. The other team waived Zydrunas Ilgauskas, and then they were able to re-sign him. And then the NBA said, nope, we're not doing that anymore. And they closed that loophole. So, yeah, there are ways in which you can manipulate the cap and stuff, but there are also just clear-cut rules where people have tried to circumvent the cap in the past, and the NBA ends up closing those loopholes. And I do believe that the Dennis Schroeder thing is one of those loopholes.
James, this start of this season is kind of all over the place. Like, obviously the Kings are a disaster, and the only team rivaling them might be the Los Angeles Clippers, and they're the other team that were in the news today with the Chris Paul situation. But you've also got the Pelicans fallen, like, in the garbage disposal of the last 2 days of the news cycle, is that Giannis is out for like 3 weeks again. Or not Giannis. Zion. Zion is out 3 weeks. And, you start looking at the Pelicans and some of the bizarre things that they have done. Do you think, after such a very strange and abnormal offseason, that the start of this season and the way some of these teams are performing, particularly ones with draft capital issues, opens up this trade deadline a lot more?
Yeah, I think that there are a bunch of teams that are looking around and like, man, we're bad. Like, how do we get better? And, I like jokingly, I wrote in the rundown this morning. Can you get better just by getting like 3 bad teams together and have them switch players? Not all of the players, because then you're just switching players and having them in a different location. But if a player isn't working in one place and another player isn't working in his place, but there's a possibility that those players might work if they were traded for each other, then you should be exploring that, shouldn't you? I'm just going to point this out. Like early on, we're already hearing, like, I'll tell you 3 teams. We're hearing this rando in Detroit talking about the Kings and the Pistons. We're hearing a little murmur out of New York about like maybe some interest in Dennis Schroeder with the Knicks. And we've heard during this offseason about Zion Williamson, and a potential, would he fit with the Kings, and would that make sense, right? And what are the things that tie these 3 cities together, or these 4 cities together? And Scott Perry. And so again, Scott Perry was the GM of the Knicks. He was an executive in Detroit for years, and he was an executive in Detroit with Joe Dumars, who's running the Pelicans. So when we start seeing these things, you have to ask 2 questions. Are other people making the same the same conclusions that I'm making right now? And saying, oh, well, maybe this would happen because because Scott Perry's in Sacramento and he has ties to these guys. Or is that a real thing? Or are the Kings and these 3 teams like having conversations about things because they have like very close relationships? And that's how a lot of trades work in the league. I mean, think back to how many times the Kings and the Houston Rockets have made trades. Think back to all the times that the Kings and the Portland Trailblazers made trades. Like, it's usually you make trades with people in the league that you're familiar with and people that you trust. And so that's why you see a lot of these things go down like this, because multiple trades happen with teams because they feel comfortable with each other. They already know what each of them want. You had a deal, a year ago that you might have worked on. And in that deal, the team told you that they were really interested in one of your players. That player wasn't included in that trade. But fast forward a year, maybe that player is in a different place with your organization, and you want to go out and make a trade for that player. So again, like, trades are really complicated. Sometimes they take a year, sometimes they take a year and a half. Sometimes, again, you start working on a trade during one of the sneaky things in the league is the G League showcase, where a whole bunch of the executives show up to the G League showcase and hang out together. And next thing you know, that's where deals are spawned, where the first idea of a potential trade starts to be formed. And then 6 months later, or 3 months later, 2 months later, you get the deal done. But it's usually that face-to-face contact that you actually have a better chance of getting something done.
I was just going to ask both of you guys, do you think, kind of like allegedly free agency goes, they might know now what the summer of 2026 is going to look like? Do you think trades work that way for the most part? And I'm not saying they do. I'm just saying the framework of a Kings Knicks deal might be done by right now, but obviously they got to wait to the 15th. And if it's not done, it's like 85% complete, and they're working on a Dylan Cardwell type guy. Like, is that usually how things go with trades? Like, or is it, hey, it's December 15th. This is the first time I talk to you. Let's work on something. Like,
I don't think it's that.
Yeah.
James probably. I don't think it's that though.
Yeah, very, very rarely is it like, what was it? Is it the Philadelphia Eagles GM that just, like, when he's got a stack of draft picks, he'll just call around like, hey, would you take a 2nd round pick for AJ Brown? And Tennessee goes, you know what? We will. He goes, oh, okay, let's do the deal. Like, you're like, wait, what? What just happened? I think that there are deals like that, but I also, like, you got to remember that there's only a couple of teams in the league that are cap teams, right? That have actual true cap space. those teams, I think this year it's Brooklyn, and I think there's one other team that was able to clear up space at the last second, and they have cap space as well, right?
Utah, that team.
Maybe it's Utah, but I don't think so. I think there's one other team in the league, and I can't remember who they have, who it is that has cap space. But the point is that every team in the league is called that team and tried to work out, or at least has a parameters of what they're looking for in a salary dump situation.
Brooklyn's another team that has a lot of cap space.
Yeah, it's Brooklyn and someone else. Yeah,
I think it's Utah, right? I think those are the only two.
Oh, maybe it is Utah. Yeah. So everyone in the league.
Danny Ainge sucks.
That's
how you capped out.
Even if it is, Danny Ainge still sucks.
Yeah, Danny Ainge always has his options open. That's what Danny Ainge is. He's a guy that,
that should be on his tombstone.
Yeah.
Danny's options to come back from the dead are still open. Like, he hasn't decided what he's going to do yet.
Yeah, it's like, hey, are you dating her? Like, no, we're just hanging out. We're kind of talking. It's like, oh, and then another girl, you're like, are you dating her? Like, no, we're just kind of, we talk every once in a while. It's like, what about that girl over there at the bar that keeps looking at you? I bought her a drink last week. It's like, that's Danny Ainge in a nutshell. You're like, dude, you got a lot of
and now all these women hate you.
Yeah, you got exactly. Yeah. Yeah. What is it? You got whatever in the fire. You got a lot of he irons in the fire. There we go. Yeah. He's always working, but people know that, and he's always looking for the best deal. And so you're always kind of like, all right. It's just bad to deal with him because he ends up dragging it out. And not only that, but he also plays a media game. So that's the other thing. Like, how many times have we heard that Harrison Barnes was getting traded to the Boston Celtics and when Danny Ainge was there?
Yeah.
Like, it was like every 3 months, every time there's a trade deadline or a summer. It sounds like things are getting close with the Celtics and the Kings for Harrison Barnes. It's like, no, Danny Ainge just kept telling people that,
what the funniest part about that whole thing was about Harrison in the Celtics? Brad Stevens, the coach of the Boston Celtics, did not want Harrison Barnes. Made that very loud and clear in the organization that Harrison Barnes is not the player that we need for this team. But everyone knows that the leak about Harrison Barnes and the Celtics kept coming from Danny Ainge.
Doesn't make any sense, but you see it all the time. I mean, it's like, how many times is John Collins attached to the Kings? I know when he was in Atlanta, he almost got traded to the Kings. I know that last year, the Jazz and the Kings discussed, John Collins coming to Sacramento again. Mike Brown allegedly didn't want John Collins on the roster. But again, if you're like,
I don't think Mike was alone in his defense, but it was his staff. I don't think his staff liked John Collins.
Yeah. Well, and there's why? Because their assistant coaches in the NBA have worked everywhere, and they all have ties to each other. So they all they use their little network to figure out whether a player would work for your team or a different team. So, there's plenty of assistant coaches that were in Atlanta or at some point were in Utah with John Collins who have had conversations with coaches that are here or that are friends with coaches that are here in Sacramento. And they all have this little network where they have conversations. There's all kinds of those networks, just so people know. Where, I get phone calls about specific players in Sacramento. Like, what do you think about this player? Like, what do you mean? What do I think? What's your question? And it's like, well, is he a good dude? It's like, yeah, he's a good dude. Like, is there a problem there? Like, no problem that I've heard. But then other players are like, well, all right. I mean, at your own peril. Like, because it's on me to be as honest as possible because that's what I'm expecting back from them. And so we have conversations, and that's kind of the way it goes around the league. It's a very, very, very small league, but also there are way more ways to get information than you think. So
when all is said and done, I mean, and given the the news we have today and the names we already know out there, what would you consider let me start with this question. This is probably a more appropriate question. Is the pressure on Scott Perry this trade deadline? Like, do you think there's a decent amount of pressure on him, given how bad this season has started, given his one main free agency move has not turned out very well? Is there a little extra pressure there?
I think it's not about that. It's about that this team is beyond broken.
Mm-hmm.
And as somebody who is in charge of this team and who has autonomy from what he says and from what everyone around the team says, that Scott Perry has autonomy to do whatever he needs to do to make this team better, whether that means taking a step back and moving forward. That puts some pressure on you, because what you don't want to do is have the brokenness become like who you are as a franchise. Like, you need to figure out what's broke, and you need to figure out how to get rid of what's broke as soon as possible. You need to, like, again, like, I don't know if the Clippers did right or did wrong here, but waiving Chris Paul to them felt like a way to stop some of the noise behind the scenes. And so they did it. And in Sacramento, it's a lot more complicated than that, because you can't just, like, a guy with a 3-year contract, and we're past the deadline for stretch provisioning people. You can't just waive somebody with a whole bunch of money on their contract and think that you're going to be okay. Like, pushing money down the road is not good business. Like, the key to, maintaining a good balance sheet is to try to trade away players, not buy them out. But like, look at the Suns. The Suns are going to pay $20 million a year off their salary cap for 5 years for Bradley Beal. Like, that's not good business.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't good business to sign him, but, like, look, if there's nowhere for him to go, then I guess that's your best option. But that's kind of where the Kings are. I don't see them taking, like, that same route with Zach LaVine right now. And I certainly don't see them doing that this summer, because this summer he's a $49 million expiring contract. You might be able to get a couple of players for Zach LaVine this summer. And that might not be what Zach wants to hear. It might not be what the Kings really want to do. But at the end of the day, that might be the most prudent thing to do. It's just say, hey, look, sorry it's not working out here, but this summer we'll try to find you a new home. And, hopefully that works out for us and it works out for you. But, maybe you take back two $25 million players that have 3 years left on their deals, but just aren't the right fit for the team that someone else is building. And maybe that helps you rebuild faster. Or maybe you do buy him out this summer and say, hey, we'll pay you $15 million a year for the next 3 years. And that way, at least you're only losing that much for 3 years, as opposed to like the Bradley Beal deal where you're losing $20 million for 5. Not easy.
We'll come back. We've got a lot more to talk to James Ham about, including basketball tonight. The Sacramento Kings are back on the floor. Yeah, they are in Houston. It's the Kings and the Rockets tonight. Only 2 games this week for the Sacramento Kings. One today and one on Saturday against the Miami Heat. So we'll touch on all of that with our insider from the Insiders. It's James Ham with Dylan KC here on Sacramento Sports Leader, ESPN 1320.
Yeah, the Chris Paul thing, I think we've all been at a job where you hire somebody and the first thing they do is they're like, hey, I that person over there makes more money than me. I want a raise. And you're like, you've been here like 2 weeks. What do you mean you want a raise? Well, yeah, but that's not fair. They haven't been here that much longer than me and they make more money than me. And then the next day they're like, I really kind of feel like I do a different position than this. I think I would be better in that position. It's like, well, we didn't hire you for that position. We hired you for this position. It's like, yeah, but that's kind of more like what I want to do. It's like,
and it
all
doesn't
right.
help when things are going so badly. Like when the things with the company, so to speak, are going so badly in that scenario, like it doesn't help.
Yeah. And with Chris, just like, all right, just go. Like,
Yeah.
you're being critical of everybody. Like, we get it.
I like Chris Paul. I had a lot of interactions with him over a handful of years, and he was always terrific. So I always judge him on that. But man, he has made some. He has a lot of workplace detractors.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
Yeah. Leezy, this is I don't know who's better. I would just tell you that Dylan Harper has more value and has a higher upside, in my opinion. And I
Sounds
think around the league, that's probably the same opinion. Like Dylan Harper was what, the third overall pick. Like he's considered, like in a really good draft, he's considered very, very high end prospect. And every time he stepped on the floor, you're like, ooh, look at that. So I'm gonna say he has more value.
Man, Chris Paul and Lawrence Frank met for 3 hours. That meeting started at like midnight.
Wait,
That's
say that again?
crazy. Chris Paul and Lawrence Frank met for 3 hours after their plane landed in Atlanta, which means the meeting probably didn't start till close to midnight.
That's tough. Because that's a player like saying, don't do this. Yeah, that does not feel like, hey, let's figure this out and go a different direction. And I'm on board, you're on board, and all that. Huh.
Yeah, I mean, from all accounts from a variety of different reporters, there were a lot of people who were sick of Chris Paul. That's too bad. That's too bad.
Stevie B, I don't know, to my knowledge, that a player has not been traded or has been traded for because
Hold on,
somebody
James.
asked me something.
All right, back here with James Ham, and the focal point of the conversation today has centered around hypothetical trades surrounding Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Paul being sent back or being sent home. And by all accounts, Chris Paul's career is over. Like there seems to be no indication that he's going to sign with another team, and he hasn't even been cut or waived by the Los Angeles Clippers. So Chris announced, I think it was over the Thanksgiving break, this was going to be his final year. So by all outward appearances, Chris Paul has played his final game as an NBA player. One of the great point guards of our generation, for sure. Maybe a top 5, I mean, probably no, maybe about it, a top 5 point guard of all time. I was just telling James, I had a lot of interactions with Chris Paul from probably like 08, 07 to maybe like 2010, 2011. He was terrific. Like I found Chris Paul to be one of the nicest people I ever interacted with, one of the coolest people I ever interacted with. But he seems to have made a lot of workplace, I don't want to say enemies, but he seems to have made a lot of people frustrated in the workplace. So not the ending I would hope for a player the caliber of Chris Paul. With all that said, James, Kings play basketball tonight against one of Chris Paul's former teams. They play against the Houston Rockets tonight. Well, they had a couple of days off, as James is very clearly frozen. They've had a couple of days off. There's no point in me even leading into a question. James is very.
Look at that, James.
James is very frozen. He's going to unfreeze. He's not going to be happy.
I'm back.
And he's back. There's no point in asking, hey, what can we expect from Sacramento? But is there any reason to believe that maybe a couple of days of practice have done this team some good?
I mean, it can't hurt. But unless they pulled out like a stretcher and made their players taller and have longer arms. Like, look, before I get to that, the Chris Paul thing, like I wouldn't be like completely shocked if Chris Paul popped back up somewhere else. Like, I don't know if they waive him. The team the Kings are playing tonight, they probably could use a backup point guard, and Chris Paul's played in Houston, and maybe that's something that would make sense. I don't know, but Yeah, he was he has been a great player in the league, and like even if you watched him in preseason, like he demolished the Kings in preseason. Like he came in and he had like 9 assists in 4 minutes and was like, "What in the world?"
Mhm.
Like, and I mean, that many assists in that many minutes, that means they scored like 18 or 20 or 25 points against you without him even really taking a shot. So I think a lot of us are like as basketball fans, we're kind of excited not to have to deal with Chris Paul, the player, watching him on the court and just the antics. But that doesn't take away from who he is. Like, I mean, he's an all-time great. He's an absolutely incredible player. And I mean,
This breakup probably hurts like
oh yeah.
another signing though, right? Like, because if I'm Houston, I got Sengun and Amen Thompson essentially playing my point guards, my facilitators, my ball handlers, my the guys who run my organizers, if you will. And given the headache that seemed to have been caused by Chris Paul in LA, that just, and like Chris Paul and Ime Udoka, yeah, that could
No?
be explosive quick. That won't take 24 games to go bad if Chris Paul says the wrong thing at the wrong time. Like that'll wind up a Shams tweet within hours.
Yeah, but I'd also point out that you're a really good team. And I think that that's part
Sure.
of Chris Paul's issue. It's like, hey, we're losing because we're not doing things the right way. Like, what are we doing here? And, like, I think that that's like, there are people in the Kings locker room that feel the same exact way. Like, we're losing and it's our fault we're losing. We're not playing basketball the right way.
Hmm.
And then there are other people who are like, I have no idea what's going on. It's like, okay, and then you have others like, here we are, here we go again. So,
That's
I
us.
think, yeah, there are all kinds of voices in a locker room. Some are big voices, some are little voices, but I think all of those thoughts are going through multiple players' heads when things go this poorly. And I think the Kings and the Clippers are in a very similar situation. They're both the first and second oldest team in the league, and on top of that, they're not playing well. And when you're a veteran team who's not playing well, then hey, people get waived, people get cut. I don't know what the Kings equivalent of that would be, because they don't really have the option to do it. But like, if you were to go out and waive Doug McDermott tomorrow, no one would be like, "Oh my gosh, you waived Doug McDermott." They would feel bad for Doug for sure, but he's not playing. So outside of that, I don't see another way in which the Kings could actually waive somebody to try to make this thing better. Just a tough spot to be in.
Do you guys think and I don't even, I guess his heyday was with the Clippers, Lob City, obviously, but do you think the way maybe the last 10 years of Chris Paul's career is gone will kind of mess with his legacy a little bit?
Nah, I understand what you're saying. Okay, season that 10 years.
Phoenix is too as well.
That's a real, like that. What he did, like obviously you go to the finals. What he did with Oklahoma City was pretty amazing. That was pretty incredible. I don't think so.
Yeah, the fact he never won anything, I think that is one of those, things that will hurt his legacy. And that every time he got to the playoffs, like it felt like he got hurt. But also you have to remember his role in all the stuff off the court with the players union
Yeah.
and how much he's impacted the game. Because I think there's a handful of players that love him. And then there's probably a bunch of players who do not like him at all because of the policies he pushed forward. So changing the age limitation on max money deals, like that helped out a very few people and it hurt a ton of other people. And it just is what it is. Like it used to be you couldn't sign a max money deal after age 34, and he got that bumped all the way back to 36 or 38. And so like again, that just means that a lot of your aging stars are making huge money and they're taking away money from the lower level players in the league. And that doesn't help. And I know Steve B here in the chat says DMC hates him. Yeah, there no love lost at all there. And Chris Paul has a way of getting under your skin like no other player. Again, Kenny, I know we talked about Dylan Brooks the other day and how Dylan Brooks can be that player who gets under your skin, but you kind of like that. Chris Paul did that with all kinds of players. And Chris Paul did a lot of unsafe things on the court that put other players at risk. And there are players that don't like him for that. Rolling around on the ground, falling down every time you shoot a 3-point shot and then getting in someone's way and having them potentially hurt themselves trying to step around you. I mean, it is what it is, but that doesn't change the fact that he's an all-time great player, because he is. He's just a tremendous, tremendous assist guy. And, I think he led the league in steals 6 times. He averages 2 steals a game for his career. Yeah, like some of his numbers are bonkers.
He was so cold. Like he was so cold. I understand what like James and I think Kyle was talking about it earlier on the Insider as well. I understand like not really enjoying seeing him play. I always love watching Chris Paul play. Like his mind and the way he would operate on the floor as a leader, as a point guard, was just always enjoyable and fascinating to me. Like I always enjoyed watching him play.
Yeah, as far as a basketball mind and a distributor, like just incredible, absolutely incredible, a joy to watch. I totally agree. What I'm talking about is the BS that came with it, the flopping, the falling down, the fake stuff all the time, the trying to bait young players into getting foul calls, and just like, all right, bro, again, that's why DeMarcus hates him. It's not because he doesn't respect his game. It's because it was all the crap that came with Chris Paul as a player. And it's frustrating. I mean, someone who's covered the league for 16 years, I covered a lot of his career. And like, how many times did he almost get in a fight with the Sacramento King? It's like almost every year there's someone who wanted to punch him.
Just wanted to shake his hand.
Yeah. Yeah. And on top of that, like DeMarcus Cousins wanted to grab him by the ankles and do like the Hulk smash with him. Just like bounce him off the floor. Yeah. I will say this, though, like as we're wrapping up that about Chris Paul, I'll tell you, Michael Malone told me that Chris Paul's the greatest leader he ever coached, without any question, the greatest leader he ever coached. And he said that, and that's a guy who was with LeBron as a young player. Like, he's like, he is unbelievable as a leader. And that's why I think when you hear this situation with the Clippers, it's like, first of all, is it you or is it him? Is it his fault that this is going on, or is it their fault this is going on? Because it sure does look like the Clippers have a bunch of problems that aren't named Chris Paul, and all of a sudden he's on his way out the door. But what exactly did he do that was wrong? It's like you can sit there and blame a guy, but if what he's saying is true and factual, and like you have issues, then you probably should try to address those, because that guy knows a lot about being a leader and about, being a very good basketball player.
Who would be the most likely player sent home from the Sacramento Kings for telling it like it is?
Russ.
Oh yeah, it would absolutely. That was easy.
Outside of Russ.
Malik.
It would be Malik, and that's because like he does let it fly. And again, maybe that's not a good thing at this point. Like losing your cool in the locker room is not.
It truthfully, Hammer, doesn't feel like there's any. Maybe Chris thought he was going to get through to these guys at some point. Maybe this is Chris's wake up call that he can't be a coach. Like maybe this is what he envisioned leadership to be, and it just guys don't respond to that. I think trying to find what guys respond to might be in Sacramento right now. Finding what these Kings players will respond to, that just might be a lost cause at this point. Like it could simply result in at some point they're going to have to get on the floor. They're going to have to play better than they have, and then something will start clicking for them. But I don't know if there's anything Doug could do, Russ could do, Alvin could do, Scott could do. I don't know that there's anything that those guys can do that'll change the course of the path that this season is very clearly and frustratingly on.
Yeah, I would even say that Doug Christie is probably closer to like the Chris Paul scenario here, not like getting fired. I mean, I haven't heard any of that, but like it's really, really difficult to be a leader or to try to work with an old group of players, with a group that already believes that, number one, a lot of them feel like their legacy is cemented. A lot of them feel like they've been doing this so long, they know more than you. Even though he's a guy who was a player who became a coach, there are guys that probably look at him and go, "Well, you were a player, but you weren't as good as I was." And so you have this whole element here of, like, trying to right a ship with a bunch of veterans. Just really difficult, and it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're, again, like leading as trying to lead as a player or try to lead as a coach. If the guys around you aren't receptive to what your message is, it makes it really difficult. And that's why, I think the part of the frustrating thing for Doug is you see his team respond and be the team that he wants it to be. And then they go away from that. So they can respond, they can beat Denver, they can beat Minnesota somehow. And then they can come back and lose to 3 teams that aren't nearly as good as those 2 teams.
Mm.
And so there's this level of frustration. And then the other thing I'll point out, I think last game was like a microcosm for this season. Like, your starting 5 were horrible. Straight up. They were so bad, you couldn't put them on the floor. You took them off the floor, put in a group of young players, and they got you right back in the game. The second you went back to the starters, they sunk you again. You go back to the young players, they bring you right back in the game. And if you're a coach, you're looking around and saying, so it's not my message. It's not my plans. It's you, the player, the group of players that aren't getting it and aren't buying in or aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's not the whole thing. It's some of you that are a problem. And that's a really difficult thing to deal with because, like, are you just supposed to bench everybody? And I think a lot of people go, yes, bench everybody. It's like, okay, well, that won't work. Trust me, it won't work. Like, it's been tried. It's, again, we talked about it on the podcast last night, me and Sean and Brendan, that Dave Yeager did that one time. Like, everyone said, oh, just play the young guys. Just play the young guys. He played all the young guys and got beat by like 45. And they were done 3 minutes into the game, just getting pounded. And you're like, oh, that's not good. That's not what this is supposed to look like. And so, like, I feel like the same thing would happen here. Like, you want to run 5 guys off the bench tonight against the Houston Rockets to open the game? Okay, that's fine. You'll appease some people and you'll lose by 35 or 40. And that's just reality.
James, we talked, myself and Damian, we talked yesterday about this start to the Kings season and comparing it to the Clippers start of the season. And Kawhi's been in and out of the lineup. I think Bradley Beal was hurt. There's another guy that has been struggling with injuries. But we talk about the Kings, and yeah, they've had some tough injuries to start the season. Like, you are missing not only 2 starters, and you can put Schroeder in there as well because at one point he was a starter. He hasn't played in about a week. But not only are you missing 2 starters, but you're missing maybe the 2 starters you could not afford to lose. And sometimes it's an excuse because you're making an excuse, and sometimes it's a reason, as to why you're struggling. How much do you put into the Kings' struggles, the fact that they've had Sabonis and Keegan not together at all this season?
I think it's a huge, huge, huge deal. Like, I've said this the last like 2 years with Kyle. Like, the 49ers have all kinds of great players, right? The 2 players that they can't live without, like, to me, it's pretty clear. It's Trent Williams and it's Fred Warner. Now, they've figured out ways to get around the Fred Warner thing, but there are players that mean so much to your franchise, and that they have to be on the court. They have to be on the field. Now, we can disagree all we want about, like, the level
That's 5, ladies and gentlemen. That's 5 seconds. We can disagree on the level, but that is the second freeze of the day. James is going to be hot when he unfreezes. This has been a tough day for the internet. It started with Kyle at home. Personally, I blame him. I absolutely blame Kyle Mattson and his stupid little home connection. It infected Jake out at Shady Pines retirement home in Connecticut. The only true professional left in the game is the one who was trying to sell me $750 lingerie, and that's Trista Crick. Flawless internet connection, beautiful camera. James is furious right now. A bourbon glass probably went flying across the handbar.
The Dwight Clark book just got ripped off.
He is upset, and now it's just gone. Man, what a day! What a
and it makes
day.
us laugh every time.
Every time. I say this all the time. The only person who doesn't find this funny is James. James is a professional. He does not think this is funny. Meanwhile, we can't stop laughing. That's fine. James was probably about to make the greatest point in the history of Sacramento radio.
I know.
And we see, but I tell you, he's not happy. James, just blame Kyle. We haven't had internet connections in God knows how long, but Kyle's COVID internet infected all of us, and now we're just trying to make it through the next 10 minutes, man. That's all we're trying to do.
He ruined it for everyone.
That's what he did.
Anyway, to get back to the point I was making, because I know exactly where I lost my way there. Look, the most important 2 players coming into this season for the Sacramento Kings, and again, we can disagree or agree on their level of play or whatever. It was Keegan Murray and Domantas Sabonis.
Mm-hmm.
You traded your backup center and brought in a 6'9" guy. That you had to supplement with another guy that you signed off the street at the beginning of the season in Precious Achiuwa. Again, Keegan Murray is the only guy who is a 3-4 combo that can play both positions and switch. And he's your best defensive player and one of your better offensive players. And, at this point, we're seeing the value of Keegan. The fact that you haven't had either one of, you haven't had both of them together, it's just such a bummer. And you know what? I'll say this though, I have not once heard anyone within the coaching staff or the front office say, man, if we just had Keegan and Domas the whole season, this thing would have been totally different. I haven't heard them use it as an excuse at all. It's a reality to the game.
Yeah, it would be a little bit different though, wouldn't it, Hammer?
Yeah, it would be different. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how different, but that stretch where they lost the 3 games out of 4 by 30 plus, those things happen because the weight of the world is on top of you and you lose your way and you lose your spirit because you keep losing the same exact way or finding new ways to lose. And then all of a sudden it snowballs on you and you just get trounced a couple of games, the mental lapse in the NBA, one little mental lapse can cost you a 5-game stretch. And so I think that we wouldn't have been in this negative space that we're in. And that negative space clearly led to additional losses. Now, I don't know what to make of this team when they come out and they beat good teams and they lose to bad teams. But it's just unacceptable. And, that the effort at home sometimes has been unacceptable. Just the general vibe around the team has just been unacceptable. And so I'd like to tell you that they would be just like a 500 team if they had those guys to start the season. But I told everybody at the beginning of the season, before we knew that Domas would be hurt and before we knew that Keegan was hurt, that 5-14 in the first 19 games was totally on the table. And that's exactly what they did. They went 5-14 and then lost 2 more after that.
And your opponent tonight is 13-5. And on a short list of favorites to compete for an NBA championship or compete with the Oklahoma City Thunder for an NBA championship. Oh, by the way, the opponent you have on Saturday is 14-7 as it stands right now.
Okay. I was trying to look at, let me see if I can pull this up in time. Give me a second. We're getting there. Hey. Rockets back home off a road trip. First game back.
Oh boy,
things are looking up for the Kings.
You know what that
things
means.
are looking up for the Kings. Let's go.
Just wait till Saturday, though. The Kings are flying tonight to Houston, from Houston to Orlando. To Miami. They will spend tonight, tomorrow night, Friday night, Saturday night.
Yeah.
In Miami.
Is there an NBA statistic for spending too many days in Miami? Oh,
yeah.
You got a Miami stat?
Miami is also coming off the road at home to take on the Kings.
Yeah, good for them. They're not partying in their home city.
Miami played the Kings in the midst of, I know we're short on time. I think this is like 6 straight road games, and the Kings home game is in between. They're at Dallas, at Orlando, home Kings, at Orlando, at Brooklyn, at Boston, at Knicks.
Well, I guess being bookended by the Orlando game isn't too crazy.
Yeah,
you said it's Orlando and then the Knicks.
No, it's Orlando Kings, Orlando. Then the Nets.
Oh, the net. Oh, still in Brooklyn.
Boston, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Nets, Boston, Knicks. Just came home real quick.
Schedule maker is fascinating.
Came home to play a Kings group that's just been hanging out in South Beach for a week. Yeah.
Well, the good news is it's like being in Vegas too long. Maybe they'll be in Miami too long, and by the time it's like Friday, they're like, man, we've been here. They're like, all right, man, we got it all out of our system. Let's just play basketball. The tricky ones are, hey, we're only here for a day, because then you just wild out.
I don't know if that's the tricky one, because the game's Saturday. That means you got Friday night in South Beach.
That's true.
Friday night in South Beach usually ends at 7 a.m.
That's true. Good point.
So,
good point. Well,
good luck to those.
Well, yeah. Good luck with that.
8 o'clock game, it looks like, on Saturday.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Fine with me. 5 o'clock start.
Yeah.
We're good. We good.
I was saying they got time to sleep it off. 8 o'clock game.
Well,
they got time to sleep it off.
Well, yes. Can you imagine if Doug says, all right, boys, no shoot around tomorrow? No shoot around tomorrow. Good news is I don't think there's a single marquee game in the league tonight. San Antonio and Orlando at 4 o'clock. That might be something we're tapping into. Outside of that, man, I guess we'll just be locked in. Detroit at Milwaukee will certainly might have to tap into the Bucks commentary for that one.
Worldwide Wobe said, awkward.
Yeah, just a smidge bit. But either way, we'll be with you tomorrow morning beginning at 10 a.m. With the insiders to recap it all here on Sacramento Sports Leader, ESPN 1320.
Vamos Kings, yes.